His crime was petty. His punishment was harsh.
System down! System down! Freedom!
There was no escape, only survival. Time log.
Mental note. Add to watch list. Well, I guess Sorority House Party didn't bring in the money the producers were expecting, as it would be another 5 years before Latt and Wimowai made another movie. But in 1997, the year the Asylum was founded, the team got back together to create their next film. The Asylum's actual first production and David Michael Latt's second stab at directing, Killers. Wow, is this a different film from their first venture. Gone is all trace of the people who brought us a bright, colorful, cheesy screwball comedy, and instead they've given us a dark, gritty, realistic, somewhat experimental thriller, where hope, joy, and all sources of light go to die. This may be the darkest Asylum production I've seen so far, in every way that word could mean. Though, after you peel away the layers of edge and darkness, it's still kind of a goofy movie, but alright, let's dive in while the tone's still intact. Heather is a spoiled rich girl who hangs out with her boyfriend Ray and his biker gang just for kicks. One night, the gang shows up in an abandoned warehouse promised illegal drugs for practically nothing that they can resell for a huge markup. Heather tags along just because she's bored and wants a slight thrill from a stroll on the wild side. However, it turns out that the drugs were stolen, and soon the drug lord and his 4 cronies invade the warehouse to get them back, with no intention to leave anyone alive. One by one, Heather's friends are killed, until only she remains. And to make matters worse, a wild card is thrown in the mix, one that wants to see both sides dead. Will Heather shed her sheltered rich girl persona and do whatever it takes to survive? When she does, will we be able to see it? I'm glad this was the direction Latt and Wimowai decided to go for their next project. They could have just stuck to making cheap comedies and skin flicks, but instead they chose to try something outside of their wheelhouse, spin a 180 and make something completely different from their first production. I don't know if this was a conscious decision by the producers, or if the first movie failed to find an audience so they had to change their focus, but either way, it's impressive to see how versatile the producers and Latt were, going from a screwball comedy to a super serial thriller. So, if nothing else, this movie serves as an experiment, an example of the variety they could produce, and an indicator of the B-movie jack-of-all genres the studio would prove itself to be. For better or worse. But that's just the shell, the importance of the movie simply existing. Does it have the substance to back up the significant milestone for the Asylum? Going in, you can tell this isn't going to be a very story-based movie. It has a basic plot, with things that cause other things to happen, and game-changing developments at certain points, but progression is very slow, with most of the runtime taken up by people just walking around or even sitting there. Heck, it's only 80 minutes, but it feels almost double that, with how long it takes to get to the next victim or plot point. There's little important dialogue, and almost no locations besides the massive abandoned warehouse everyone is trapped in, so if you were expecting non-stop action or appealing scenery, you're gonna be disappointed. Now in this movie's case, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's supposed to be a slow-paced thriller, one that depends on gradual build-up and fear of the unknown to grab the audience's attention. And yeah, it does quite a decent job of it. The warehouse is very dark, very dingy, very claustrophobic, with almost nothing to indicate where one team stands from the other. At any moment, anyone from the hero group could turn a corner and get slaughtered, or the villains could find their dead-end hiding place and massacre all survivors at once. It's that feeling of paranoia and helplessness that serves to push this movie along. It's like the original Alien or Predator movies. A group is hunted by unknown foes they have no conventional way to defend themselves from, while trapped in an already dangerous and confusing landscape. And, give the movie credit, I haven't seen the scenario done in a more realistic setting where the antagonists are just people and not aliens or supernatural slashers. In that way, it's almost sort of like Die Hard, as we follow people stuck in the same building as the villains, trying to maneuver over the killers, knowing they're outmanned and outgunned and the only way to win is to be invisible. There's even a scene where the brother of one of the gang is killed, pushing him over the edge and making things even riskier for the heroes. For what the crew had to work with, they used to great effect, giving the movie an aura of the stress, horror, and hopelessness that the characters must endure in an attempt to survive. But with that said, things can still get pretty boring. In the Alien and Predator movies, a good chunk of the beginning was in setting up the characters, introducing us to their quirks and personalities, and showing us what their individual skill sets are. So we want to see how far these characters can get, and we're shocked when their talents fail and each one is wiped out until there's only 1 or 2 survivors. Here, the massacre starts 5 minutes in and lasts the entire movie, so we're not given much of a chance to connect with these characters. With the slight exception of Heather, we know nothing about anyone going in. Everyone's just there to be meat. So it's less Predator and more Predators. And again, that's all this movie is. This giant, slow game of hide and seek. I know I just praised the movie for its effective aura of fear and desperation, but an audience's adrenaline only lasts for so long before the terror starts to become mundane. Die Hard had many suspenseful and adrenaline-packed scenes with John McClane and the terrorists, but it occasionally cut away to the cops, the news, the limo driver, the party guests, different scenes with slightly different tones, so the audience had a chance to cover from the more suspenseful scenes, as well as get a sense of world building and appreciate the next scenes all the more. But when we're just given a bunch of characters thrown into a dark building where we don't know where one thing is in relation with another, or how close our killers are to our heroes, and we're expected to feel terrified for them for over an hour, any feeling or attachment kind of just wears off, and you start begging for the killers to just finish them off. Or the heroes to finish them off. Somebody, please finish somebody off! The movie needed a bit more blunt exposition to counter its sharp edginess, is what I'm saying. But thankfully, the movie is kept from getting too boring by its characters. I know I just trashed the movie for not giving us enough time to sympathize with anybody, but as the movie goes on, we are given an insight into them, how different they are from one another, and a few even get a bit of an arc. We have this sleazy drug thief named Speed, who is enjoyably sleazy and jumpy, and who doesn't last long when the bullets start flying. We have the leader of the biker gang and Heather's boyfriend, Chip, who doesn't have a problem with dealing drugs, but doesn't want to hurt anyone he doesn't have to. We get Sookie, a Latino woman who's basically second in command, and who kicks the most ass in this movie, doing most of the work and keeping the bad guys off their trail and even managing to kill one of them. We get the killer gang members, most of which who don't want to be there, but if their leader tells them to shoot, they'll do it gladly. Especially Bobby, the younger brother of the gang leader, who's delightfully psychotic and poses the most threat to the heroes, before he's taken out of the picture. But of special note is Nicky, this big, burly blonde guy with PTSD. He's played by Paul Logan, a stuntman actor with probably the most impressive resume out of the cast, including a surprisingly long run with the Asylum that continues to this day. He's actually one of the more important characters, so I won't spoil too much about him, but think Carl from Die Hard, just even more insane. But easily the best character in the movie is the leader of the killers, Dan, played by Scott Carson, in his 4th appearance on this retrospective, but making his first ever film appearance here. And, I'm just gonna say it, I think this was the role he was born to play. He's a spoiled, sadistic, yet dignified daddy's boy who thinks life is a game where he holds all the cards, and he has no qualms about using his gang to enforce that delusion.
Can we get on with this, please? My parents are expecting us for dinner. You took a kilo out of stock without telling anyone. You stole from us.
I was gonna pay.
I see that's what this is for, right? But a kilo's gotta be worth 35, 40 the current market value, and with a kicker to cover transportation, that's 50. You also seem to think that we're stupid.
No, man.
You know what? I don't think that you respect us. Snapping means hurting. Pointing is key.
His performance gets even better as things get worse for him. When his brother's killed by Sookie, things become intensely personal for him, and the stakes are raised higher against our heroes. His cool demeanor is dropped, replaced with rage at losing his brother and fear for the repercussions from his powerful father, who he tries to call throughout the movie.
Nicky, get Rafe and meet me at the front. I want them all dead. Dad, I really need to talk to you, and call me back, okay? Call me back.
And as his gang starts dropping like flies and he becomes one of the hunted, even that persona is shed and he's reduced to a whimpering coward. unable to protect himself and still desperately trying to contact his father to bail him out. It's legitimately a good performance, and the best character arc in the movie, making Dan's struggles the easiest to empathize with. And with how masterfully Scott plays him, it really makes me feel bad that for most of his career, he was relegated to mostly playing supporting roles. And porn. And then there's our lead Heather, played by Kim Little. Yes, Bree from Sorority House Party has her first starring role in an Asylum production, and this time wisecracks won't save her. Heather is a rich, spoiled girl, someone who likes to walk on the wrong side of the tracks just for a thrill. She sees things like drug deals and gang conflicts just as distractions in her mundane life, and with her gang leader boyfriend protecting her, she's never actually had to get her hands dirty. To her, as with Dan, everything's a game. So when things go south, her boyfriend is no longer around to protect her, and every step she takes might be her last. She's forced to take a more active, offensive role to kill the killers and stay alive. A role she doesn't immediately fall into, as she goes through a lot of crap in this movie. Having her boyfriend shot right in front of her, being spotted by one of the killers, nearly being drowned by Bobby, these are experiences that she shouldn't have been able to walk away from, but somehow she does, leaving a bit of herself behind each time. And when things are reduced to mono e moore, she embraces what she's become and utterly destroys her foes. And I just made that sound more awesome than it actually is. You'd think this would be the main focus of the movie, and somewhat of a mirror to Dan's regression, but as it's presented, it's barely above a subplot. Sure, those things I mentioned do happen to Heather, but that's practically all we get out of her. Heck, for the supposed lead, she's barely in this movie. The screen's more focused on Sookie, or Dan, or the occasional shot of one of the other heroes or killers, all of which do more to progress the plot than she does. Because when she is on screen, she's either cradling her dead or comatose boyfriend or walking around in a daze. To the point where when she actually does something, it feels out of character. The arc is there to drive her from her beginning mindset to the much darker mindset she has by the end, but because the movie doesn't focus on its own lead, you forget she even has an arc. It's like she's there at the beginning, a few things happen to her, then the movie forgets she exists, then at the very end she's suddenly badass. I don't blame Kim for any of this. I think she's more than competent playing both a spoiled girl out for thrills and the soulless void she later becomes. But for a movie obviously made as a showcase for their lead, maybe they could have done us the favor of showing us their lead. Most of the technicals for this movie are done alright, except for one we'll get to in a second. The camera work is fine, able to swerve around corners and frame scenes in a way that doesn't make things claustrophobic for the audience, and the film seems to be higher quality than the previous movie. I don't remember any major audio glitches, so we're spared extremely echoey dialogue or fading in and out like previous Asylum movies, or even that weird interruption glitching their first movie had. And we're given a pretty sweet ambient backing track that plays throughout the movie, perfectly capturing the severity and seriousness of the situation. But where the movie really excels is in its use of color, though it did have me annoyed at first. For the first third, the film is covered in various color filters that really started to grate on my nerves. Like they were intentionally overlaid because they thought it would make the film look more professional, or they wanted to be pretentiously artistic with their style. But as the movie went on, I found that they actually represent different stages of Heather's mind, tied to the well-being of her boyfriend. The beginning is very colorful, and annoyingly so, representing the tinted glasses naive Heather must be seeing the world through. Bright, flashy, and almost dreamlike. Even in a dark, depressing location, dealing in illicit goods stolen from a gang that might want them back, she has her boyfriend and no reason to worry, so it's all her little fantasy. But when her boyfriend is shot, it instantly clears into more natural colors, as if she's suddenly been woken up from her dream world and must now see reality for what it is. And as her boyfriend dies and her situation becomes more dire, the color in the movie slowly drains away, until at the end, all Heather can see are the extremes of black and white. That is a simple, yet ingenious, use of creative post-production work. As all hope and meaning drains from Heather's life, so does the color from the film. It's subtle, it's meaningful, it's not overly pretentious, it's a clever trick that I'm surprised the movie pulled off. And it reminds me of Sin City. Anything that does that has scored major points in my book. Of course, the use of color would have been better if I could actually see this movie. Yeah, I put it off for long enough. You've been waiting for me to address it, and this is the deal breaker for this movie: the absolutely terrible lighting. This movie is shot so darkly, I can't see half of it. And of the half of the movie I can see, I still can't see half of it. Nearly every shot, half of the frame is plunged into complete and utter darkness, to the point I can't tell where we are, what characters are on screen, and what the hell is going on. And some shots begin and end in complete darkness. It is possibly the worst lighting I've ever seen in a movie. Galaxy Invader, Dog Day, and the Fan 4-Stick movie are all pointing and laughing at this film. I mean, do they have nothing on hand to make actually viewing this movie possible? Spotlights, car headlights, candles, a friggin' dollar store glow stick would be an automatic improvement. When you're making the flashlight beams from Scarecrow seem professional by comparison, it's time to fire your lighting director. Or get one to begin with. And once again, we're dealing with low VHS quality. Unlike Sorority House Party, this movie apparently did get a DVD release, but it's super rare and I couldn't find an affordable copy, so I'm again using footage from an inferior format. Maybe they fixed this on the DVD. Maybe I can actually see where these people disappear to on the optical disc version. But I likely won't find out. Also, I highly doubt it. But on the whole, this movie is not bad. Not good, absolutely amateur, but certainly better than its IMDb score suggests. The lighting's a joke, the film's tone overstays its welcome, and the supposed lead is kept in a drawer until they need her for a second. But the acting is passable, the characters are interesting enough, the artful use of color is a surprisingly interesting addition, and it's a legitimately thrilling plot. Which I guess I'm not alone in thinking, since it was popular enough to warrant a sequel 5 years later. I guess with how bad the lighting is, I can't recommend this as a serious watch. But if you're a curious thriller or Asylum fan, want to see something with the elements of Alien, Predator, and Die Hard, and you don't mind if you can't see half the screen, you might still find something worthwhile here. Plus, this is the first appearance of the Asylum's trademark crazy credits, where they usually smart-mouth something right before the end, so that might be worth checking out for completion's sake. Pop it in, check it out, and find out what lights you'll end up seeing this movie in. If you can see the movie at all. Alright, the Asylum has been founded, they're both making and distributing movies, and Latt, Wimowai, and Strain are back in business. And while Latt's just gotten back into directing, it's time for him to take a stab at producing an Asylum production. A role he would more fully embrace as the Asylum grew. And the resulting film would be something a little similar to his first movie. Let's hope it's as funny. Hey there everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider supporting me on Patreon and help me create even more content like this. It's only $1 to get early access to my videos, and only $5 gets you a credit at the end of each of those videos, with higher tiers offering these and even more perks. And as you help me reach certain goals, I have super special content lined up for all of you. Head on over and check out my Patreon today, and I'll see you next time.